I am back in Birmingham now, and as I was leaving Leeds, on the last day, I didn't do anything on the first or second day really, but on the last day I did quite a lot. There was the museums were open. It was just Monday that it wasn't open, and I went to see the War Museum. There was lots of things to do, and Leeds was better than I thought, but it was a big shopping centre, and if you don't have any money to go shopping, it's kind of like, is there any point? And then you think, if I buy stuff, then I can't afford it, and I don't even have any space in my cupboard for it. And then I went to one shop, and I noticed that the coach journey that I had this light white shirt on, and I thought that would be enough because it was such a hot day, but they had the air conditioning on full blast throughout the whole journey, and I was freezing. I asked them to turn it off halfway through, and we got to a certain point, there was like a stop in the middle, and they did, and it got better then. But yeah, I needed to get an extra jumper because I realised that if they did the same thing back, and they did. I actually woke up. I fell asleep in the coach, and I woke up halfway through with blocked nose because I don't know what it was. The air conditioning was just like blooming right above my head. I was freezing cold. I did manage to buy. I can't believe it. I got it from the shop, the same shop. There's charity shop that had £1 on it. I went back to the store, and I found that it actually says, "Oh, Anna" on it. It's been a bit creased up because, but yeah, I'm good. And it's quite nice. But and I also got this one for £1. It was brand new with tags. £18 the tags say, and it's all shimmery purple. Very happy with it. It was only £1, but yes, it doesn't fit in my wardrobe. So there's a one drawer that has like a printer and lots of other kind of electrical stuff in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to move that stuff up into the attic. I only use the printer like a couple of times a year, and the camera's broken again. I only use the video camera, the printer 2 or 3 times a year, and it would be easier if it's in the attic because getting at this particular drawer is kind of hard. But I can put loads of jumpers in it, and I have way too many jumpers, so I've had to shift my wardrobe around to be able to fit this in. But it does fit in. And what else? Yeah, Leeds was nicer on the last day. It was really sunny and really hot that day, so that was good. I might go back because there is an amazing Ballantyne gym up there. It's not that close to the centre. It would have been about a half-hour scooter, but I could have done it. But I had paused my membership, so I couldn't actually go to it. But it has inspired me to make me want to do another journey up there, not to go shopping, but just so that I can use this Ballantyne, which is a particularly nice one, even though it's in a lower tier. It's annoying. It's in a lower tier to the one I'm paying for. So the one I'm paying for is 45, and this one's probably about 40 or 35 a month, and yet it looks amazing. It's got like saunas, a special spa area. It's so much better than my one. Yeah, quite a lot of the Ballantynes are so much better, and yet my one seems to be in a higher tier than most of the others. I'm not too sure why, but it's unfortunately there aren't that many spas in Birmingham, and this is pretty much the only one that I can cycle to, which is quite annoying, because I would have preferred a cheaper one or a better one. There was one that before COVID, and that closed down. That was only £20 a month. So that was amazing. I actually preferred it in a way to the one that I'm doing now, and it was half the price, much closer, 10 minutes away, but because of COVID it got shut down, and I think the tenancy was running out, so it was going to shut down anyway, but it shut down 2 years earlier than it should have done. But anyway, yeah, I've been posting a lot about the Gazan war and stuff, and that TYT guy is really, really angering me actually. I on one hand, genocide! These people are monsters! How could they look at a 7-year-old child being blown up and think, let's do more? I don't know, he's just really like, he's literally like that, and he's accusing these people of being, of wanting this genocide, and he's just so blind to how awful the world is, I don't want to just pick on Muslims, and I don't want to just pick on Christians. I'm picking up on everyone, if I'm looking at my sister as an example of of a typical person, if I'm looking at poor, rich, whatever. This world is such a horrible place, and there's so many, I don't want war, but there are 8 billion people here, and there are huge amounts of people living in poverty, and Gaza, I saw a video and it said like 47% of people were living in poverty, and yet these people were still having 6 or 7 babies. These families, a lot of the families are large. Why are they having so many kids if they can't afford to look after them? And the thing is, there is no crops or no food being grown, and for a country to survive, they have to work and make products, sell the products abroad, and in exchange for food. This is kind of the exchange. And if you've got a country that's so small as Gaza, are they able to do the exchange of, we'll give you a bunch of tomatoes if we give you these services? Or I don't know how it was, but I know that there was a lot of poverty there, and I don't think you can understand how horrible life is living in poverty unless you've actually experienced it. And then to have people accuse genocide of being such a terrible thing when the people who are alive are suffering every single day, and I think genocide is the answer. If people are suffering every single day, they can't afford food, and Israel, people keep saying, oh, Israel should give more aid, more help. Why? This should be their own country. These are their own people. They have their own religion, their own way of life, their own, they need a country of their own, I guess, but it's such a small place that it might not survive. And if it's being taken over by terrorist organizations or people that don't have the best intentions, why doesn't it like join up with Egypt or something, so that it's part of the Egyptian land or something? I think when it comes to Muslims and other religions, you have to separate them. These are the Muslim countries, and these are the Christian countries, and okay, Turkey is kind of mixed, so that's doing fairly well, I think, because of that's coping. But if I don't know, there's something weird about the spiritual aspect of Israel, and I just, what he was saying was just kind of made me want to kill him. Like, I don't want to be considered a monster, but at the same time, I don't want millions of people living in poverty, and nor do I want them to be a burden for other people. And I do support genocide. I do support genocide if the huge number of people that are going to die are people who are living in poverty and who are relying on help and relying on aid. I do support genocide in America when it comes to the homeless people. If there's way too many of them and you can't feed them and you can't house them and you can't look after them, yeah, give them some sort of pill and say, let's go to heaven or something. I do support that, and I'm not a monster for thinking that. I think you're a monster for allowing just, the population of Gaza is gone from being 1.7 million to 2.3 or 2.3.5 million, and I think because of the war it's killed about 2 million, 3 million, so it's gone back down to 20 million, but it's still 3 million more than it was back in 2012, I think that was. And if countries like this are supported or surviving on aid from other people, then the more the babies they have, the more the population gets bigger, the more aid they need, and maybe they're giving them the same amount of aid, but now that there's more mouths to feed, they're not able to have the resources. And I can understand the countries, whether it be whatever religion, what I can understand the countries wanting to support the people in their own country and not wanting to support someone else of a different belief, a different culture, a different religion. Egypt doesn't want to take in all the Gazans because they want to put the Egyptians first, and the Syrians want to do the same about the Syrians. And I know that some things that he was saying was ticking me off, because he was just like, they just want more. They just want more. They just want more deaths and more genocide. And I'm just thinking, yeah, I do. And I'm not a monster for that. I want it because I'm looking at the overall picture, the big picture, the amount of suffering. I do not want people living in suffering. I do not want people to have to live off charity and live off other people's money or other people's gifts aids. Okay, the destruction is great. It is massive. But I think the population is massive, and the world's population is massive, and if anything, I don't support the destruction of buildings, but I do support genocide, and I feel like a monster because he is saying that I am, and that's really really pissed me off. But at the same time, it's made me think, you know what? I believe in what I'm saying, because I don't want people living like this. I don't want people, even before, even when the houses were looking nice, they were not. I don't like seeing women dressed up in veils, hiding themselves, and just streets of men dressed up in dirty clothing because how dirty the areas is. The whole place is full of sand, and it's a very muddy country. When I was in Thailand, it was very dirty. When you're walking around Bangkok, you didn't want to wear something white because it wouldn't stay white for long, and yet they all wear white. I think they must be using some sort of bleach or something to keep it clean. But it's annoying, because when you have people like him, it makes you feel like a monster. And then it makes me proud to want to be a monster, because I know what I'm fighting for. I want a world where everyone is happy, where everyone's smart, where everyone gets along, and where poverty doesn't exist. And unfortunately, genocide is the best way to get rid of poverty. And if he's just going to see it as these kids are dying, these kids are, if you support the idea of innocent 5-year-olds, I don't see them as innocent 5-year-olds. I see a lot of these people as reincarnated 5-year-olds who might have been terrorists in their past life. They might have gone through war and died and then been reincarnated as a child. So I don't see them as innocent. Some of them might be, first timers as a human, and they were just like one of the dogs. There's lots of dogs walking around the streets. So when these dogs die, if the population starts expanding, some of these dogs become human, but they have the wrong values. If you're living in poverty, most people think, I don't want to have any more kids, because I don't want to bring kids up into this poverty. I can't guarantee that I can feed these kids. I can't guarantee that I can provide a home for them. I'm living in a 2-bedroom flat and I've got 5 kids already. I don't want any more. That's what most people would think. And if these people aren't thinking like that, most people don't even have more than 3. If these people aren't thinking like that, if they just think, oh, more babies, the more blessed, or whatever, that is going through their head, I don't see them as being the same as other people. And if that makes me a monster, then fine. But what he's saying is annoying me, because it's true on one hand, but on the other hand, I don't change my mind, and I wish I could explain that to him, and I want to say that maybe him allowing this growth to happen and not allowing genocide to happen, maybe he's being the monster, because he's the one who's allowing poverty to grow. If you have a bunch of poor people that can't afford to get the resources, that can't grow crops because there's no water in their land, and if you allow them to go from a population of 1.7 million to 3.7 million, and 50% of them are already living in poverty, the more kids they have, the more impoverished they're going to be, and then the more poverty there's going to be, and therefore not supporting genocide could actually be seen as the people who don't support it could actually be seen as being the monsters. Why? Because you are allowing this poverty to grow, and these people are just thinking, I want to survive, I want to live, and they're living horrible lives, and they're getting angrier, and they're wanting to take over. That's probably why I can understand that Israel is feeling more and more threatened by them, because there are obviously way too many people in such a small area, and they're going to want to expand, and they're going to start draining the resources of the lands around them, and we don't want, in England, people in England don't want millions of migrants coming in each year. We don't want that. That's just a drain on our own resources and our own wealth, and the people in England are getting poorer and poorer and poorer, because the houses are getting more and more expensive, and we can't afford it. We can't afford the rent, and what, you're going to give our resources to huge amounts of immigrants? Like, I'm not against immigration. I'm against too much immigration, and it's the same with Gaza. If the population is low, if the people said, I don't have any money for this kid, so I'm going to have an abortion, or I'm going to wear condoms, or I'm not going to get pregnant, if they put their children first, they wouldn't keep having them and birthing them into this society. So if people do keep having more and more kids that they can't afford to look after because of the resources are not there, should Israel really be blamed for these kids that shouldn't be born? And and if they are having too many kids, it's because they don't care that their kids are going to grow up into poverty. They're just thinking it's better that they're alive and suffering than they're not alive. And that's what the people who would call the genocide promoters as being, you know, the monsters, when really I would see it the other way around. You're a monster. You're a monster for thinking, okay, there's 1.7 million people living in here. Half of them are in poverty, and in the last 10 years there's been another 5. You know, if we do nothing, don't go to war, just make peace, you know, well, in another 10 years time, well, there's going to be 3 million living in the same conditions, and they're going to want to war, because they're going to want more land, because they're going to need more land, because they have more mouths to feed, more people to house, more everything, and they're growing at a very high rate. And I don't know if Israel is growing at a high rate, but they've got the land. You know, if you're having kids and you can afford it, if you're having kids and you've got a couple of bedrooms to spare, have them, you know. But if you don't have them. And if you can't understand this logic, you are not all the same. Some people have 5-bedroom mansions, and some people have a tiny studio flat where they can barely afford it. Now, if you're in that situation, you should not be having kids. And if you think you have the right to have 9 kids when you don't have the resources for them, then if they start being killed, partly your fault. It should be partly seen as your fault for having them in the first place, and for not thinking about their needs. And you know, I've seen people that have lots of kids, and then they say, "Oh, we've got more," and I'm just thinking, take care of the ones you got. Stop just having more. It's like this greed, and you're not a monster for thinking, right, there's too many in this small area, and genocide is now the only way. And I don't think you're a monster for supporting genocide, and because of reincarnation, I don't think. But yeah, if you don't believe in reincarnation, then you're not going to see it from that perspective. And I wish that TY guy had a little bit more sense of truth and realised that reincarnation was truth, had a little bit more sense of the damage. You know, Greenpeace is hating the billionaires because of the problems that they're causing. And okay, I'm sure there's plenty of billionaires that are oil miners who are causing problems, but there are plenty of billionaires that are for the support of a massive depopulation plan. Now, if Greenpeace really cared about the planet, you would care about the billionaires that want to massively reduce the population. Why? Because that's going to save the planet. And you know, there's so many Christians that are like this. You know, we promote the Bible, put the Bible in the schools, take out the horrible books. And then you're saying, so should, like the story of a father being raped by his daughters, should that be in there? Oh no, we shouldn't allow that. Oh well, that's in the Bible. Oh, so it's just like that. On one hand they're promoting the Bible, on the other hand they're saying that they shouldn't and they should get it out. So they're confused. And I think there might be some Greenpeace people as well who hate the billionaires, who want to just, you know, control and start wars to try and reduce the population. But yeah, I don't know about the Gaza there, because so many houses were destroyed, and it's almost like they weren't trying to kill the people. It's like they were just trying to kill more resources. And that's, I think he was yelling at them almost for saying for killing people and not just attacking buildings or something. But I think it's the other way around. I think that the people are the ones that need to be reduced so that there's less poverty. And if you're just attacking the houses, then you're actually just creating more poverty. So I don't agree with war how humans have it, because that's just creating more poverty. You know, I want people out of poverty, and for people to come out of poverty, you're not supposed to touch the buildings. You're not supposed to, well, unless they're ugly ones, unless they're falling apart and need to be redone, you know. But yeah, I don't know, because I don't want people to call me a monster for supporting massive population reduction. And yeah, I don't know what to say, because just how he talks as well. They're a monster, and I'm just like, you know, if you died, I don't care, because you're not in support of me getting rid of poverty through genocide. And yeah, and would I be willing? I don't think I care enough. I'm too suicidal myself to care. You know, would I be willing to actually kill someone myself? Probably not, because I feel like I just don't want to live here, you know. I like that New Religion song of July Jones, but and I want to make a music video of it, but take out all like the characters like Buffy and Glory and just loads of strong female characters and make a music video out of it. I just don't have the energy. I don't like this world enough. I don't like people enough. I hate loads of people, whether they be in poor countries or rich countries. There's so many people that I hate, and I hate everyone really, and I hate this world, and I don't want to be here, and I definitely wouldn't want to be here if I was living in Gaza. And a lot of people are saying that they'd rather be dead than go through what they're going through. And if that's the truth, then why are people angry at them being killed? If they're not living a nice life, and they haven't been throughout their whole life. Poverty existed before it happened, and okay, the place is looking like a mess. Like the resources that they had have been taken away from them, because that's what they had to build up these properties. But there's too many people. There is too many people. The spirit's not coping, and all these the best ones are going to be brought back to life again through reincarnation. So I think you need to trust that.